Awesome. Well, it looks like we're live and we'll have people coming in and out, I'm sure, as we go on. But I'm just going to jump right into this training session, mostly because I don't want this to take too much time. And for the people rewatching, I don't want to take too much time at the beginning. And so this video is really going to be an overview of Figma and how to use the app. It's not really an explanation of why your team should be using Figma. I'll probably end up doing a separate training video for that. It's an incredible tool, and the best part is it's free. So if you don't know about it, there's really nothing stopping you from testing it out. Yeah, let's just go ahead and jump right in. Cool. So I've actually gone ahead and created a new account in Figma just so you can kind of follow along easily. And so this is what it'll look like. They'll give you 2 or 3 different templates that you can mess around with, just kind of explaining the main features of the app. So I'll let you play around with those, and you can find that in the recent tab here on the left. And this is where you're going to find all the other projects. They have a couple other features. Obviously, you can search. There's a community tab where you can get templates and look at inspiration, which is pretty cool. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. And they also have some team features, which is pretty cool. But I'm just going to be focusing on the basics of the app. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. And the way I'm going to be separating this is I'm actually going to be dividing this up into 2 or 3 main sections. I'm going to talk about the interface. We're going to look at some of the design tools that they have that's pretty unique to the app, and also talk about some shortcuts. And then the last thing we'll talk about is just exporting and how you can get your actual designs out, whether it's a specific element or if you want the whole design to be exported. So let's go ahead and start with the interface. We already went over the dashboard. And the next thing you need to know is the toolbar. So the toolbar is this black bar up here, pretty simple. And this is obviously where all your tools are. You can navigate back to your dashboard, and you can play around with a couple of different menu items like turning on and off rulers and a couple of other things. It looks a lot more complicated than it is, but that's kind of like the main menu there. But you're really going to be concerned with these tools up here. So this is your pointer tool, and this is basically, you probably won't change this. You can scale up. So when you click and drag, it scales out rather than just clicking and dragging. And then you've got a frame tool. And now basically everything you do in Figma is going to be done on a frame, or at least should be done. So you'll notice that we have this new tab on the right has popped up when I selected that tool. And these are basically set canvas sizes. So you'll see they have it categorized by phone, tablet, desktop, watch, and a couple of other things. And these are really meant to be quick shortcuts to fit the medium you're designing for. So, if you're doing a mobile app, you'd probably go to the phone. And if you're designing on an iPhone, or maybe you're designing on an Android, you could actually click that. And as soon as you do, it'll just create a completely new canvas for you with the exact dimensions. So this saves you a ton of time from having to, Google search what the pixel and resolution range of an iPhone 8 is as opposed to an iPhone 11. And as you can see, it's pretty updated. They haven't added the latest iPhone 12, but they have everything up into that. And at least it gives you a close enough reference so you can just quickly jump to those. So that's the frame tool, and that's really useful. And I'll just move over to the shapes up here. And so pretty standard. You've got rectangle, you've got a line, arrow, a couple of other things, and you can place images. I don't ever use this place image tool. I basically only ever use it for, I only ever use images by just clicking and dragging straight in. And as you can see there, if you click, it'll just create a rectangle. And I'm going through this quickly because I'm just kind of covering the toolbar for right now. And there's drawing tools up here. You've got text tool, and then these last two, the hand is really just a click and drag. But if you're on the move tool, you don't really need to do that. And then the last thing is comments, and this is super helpful for your team. It's really helpful to have revision when you're doing revisions and stuff, to have this comment feature, because it's just really helpful to be able to have a chat integrated into the design, so you don't have to try and match up emails to the design or to a PDF, you just comment right inside the app. And then up here in the middle, you can just rename your project. And if you download this, you can actually, click the drop down, not download it. But if you click that drop down, you'll see this show version history. And this is an incredibly useful feature. It's a little hidden, but it's invaluable if you ever want to go back to an older version of a design that you may have deleted. So it's a little bit like Google Docs in this way, where they just keep a running track record of everything that you've done inside this project. Obviously, I just started, but you can see my current revisions. They just keep the log there. And if multiple people were working on it, it put their name there as well. So that's pretty cool to see. You can also, I guess, track how much contribution is coming from each person if you're interested in that. And we'll just jump back to edit. And so we've got the tools on the left. We've got our middle panel where we can rename the history. And then on the right, we've got what I would just say your collaboration. So you can see I'm obviously on the document here. And this is also like Google Docs, where if someone else joined, another little avatar would pop up there. And unfortunately, I can't show this to you because I'm the only one on here. But if someone did, and maybe they were doing a presentation or something, you could actually come up here and click on their little avatar. And what it would do is just mirror your screen to what their screen shows. So whenever they move around the document, it would actually move your document around as well. And you can just track what they're doing. So that's really helpful, maybe on a Zoom call or something if you're not sharing your screen. And then lastly, you can share your document. And this is, again, very similar to Google Docs. You'll notice a lot of similarities throughout the app. And this is where you can set permissions and copy links and stuff. I'm not going to get into prototyping. I don't want to overwhelm you too much in this session. Basically, it's really meant to, it's used for when you're designing a lot of UX things for, or user experience things for a website or specifically like mobile apps where you want to see when you click this button, where does it go? I'm probably not going to cover that. I could spend a whole nother training session on just prototyping. It's pretty complicated. But yeah, that's your toolbar at the top here. And then we've got our left panel on here, and there's two tabs that you need to know. There's the layers, and then there's assets. Obviously, this is blank, and so it'd probably be helpful if I start creating some content so you can follow along. So I'm just going to create a wonderfully designed website. And you can bear with me as I do this. So that's my wonderful website. And but you can see as soon as I've done that, we have a canvas now in our layers. And so that will have that little grid icon. That's how you know it's a canvas. They actually call them frames, but that's what that little tic-tac-toe symbol is up there. And there's nothing in the assets yet, but this will be used when we create components, which I'll get into in just a little bit. Another cool thing about the left panel is that you can have multiple pages. So if you just click this, you can actually navigate to different pages. So maybe if you label them something like wireframes, then you create another page, you could say like design version 1, and then you get an entirely new page, and you can just switch between those. This is super helpful for keeping everything in one document. You definitely don't need to create a wireframe document and then go create a new project for design V1, and then you have to share both projects with everyone. Definitely a good idea to just keep them all in the same place. And then if you needed to delete or rename, you can just right click and take that out there. And then lastly, I already touched a little bit on this. We've got the right side of the screen. This is the right panel. And when you don't have anything selected, it's just going to show these 3 tabs here. Again, I'm just focusing on the design. The prototype and inspect tabs are more for your developers and your UX designers. If you went there, it's going to start showing you code and stuff, and it's an awesome feature, but I'm not going to get into that. And so that's what happens when you don't have anything selected. But you'll notice as soon as I hit a rectangle, everything, or a shape, everything fills with the dimensions. We've got the coordinates. Obviously, I can change the color. And then you've got a couple of effects down here for stroke, effects, and export. And this is different for each element. Obviously, if you're working with text, then you're going to have fonts and stuff like that. But that's essentially the interface. Of course, there's a couple little things here and there that I'm skipping over, but that's the interface really. You've got your dashboard, which you can create your projects and manage your library. You've got your toolbar here at the top, and then you've got your left panel, which is going to be your layers, assets, and pages. And then on the right panel, you've really got your effects is the best thing to consider. It's like I said, it's properties of you've got your coordinates and your colors and fonts and stuff like that. So that's part one, and I'm going to take a water break since I know I went pretty fast through that. But as you can see, it's not super complicated. If it does seem complicated to you, then you probably haven't used apps like from Adobe or anything like that, because they have way too many menus and tools that they just put right at the beginning. And the coolest thing, and this is something I'll talk about later with one of the shortcuts, but if you just get super overwhelmed, you can just, if you're on a Mac, hit Command and /, and then all the tools will go away. And then you feel a lot less overwhelmed. So this is also really useful if you're working with a client, and instead of exporting it and showing them in maybe a PowerPoint or something like that, and you just want to show them inside Figma, that's a really useful shortcut to know. And that's just Command and /. I'm going to talk more about shortcuts in just a few minutes. But yeah, that's the interface. I see we got a couple comments. And looks like we got a couple people watching, which is awesome. So the second thing I was going to talk about is design tools. And Figma is actually really cool with some of the features they have. Again, it just amazes me that it's a free tool, because I've used paid Adobe apps for years and years, and Figma does a really good job of keeping up with those, and you don't have to pay for it. So one of those features that is invaluable is auto layout. And this feature will save you so much time. And basically what it does is it allows you to group certain sections, or rather group certain elements in a section, and then align them automatically. And it's probably easier if I just show you, but if you see I've got my text, and I'll just, I'm going to really quickly grab some placeholder text. If you're ever looking for placeholder text, go to Lorem Ipsum. You can just copy as much as you want. And now we've got placeholder text. I'll just put that in there. And now my long text box is all the way over here. But yeah, so you've got your basic layout here with, a one column is just like an image or a shape. And then you've got your text on the right. So let's say you probably want to group your text together. And you can do that by just coming onto the left here, right clicking, and just saying group selection, or you can hit Command G if you're on a Mac. All my shortcuts are going to be for Mac, so you can figure out if you're on a Windows. And then so we haven't done any auto layout stuff yet, but we've just grouped the text. And what we're going to do is select the group of text, and then hold Shift and select the rectangle. And we can come up here to the alignment and just align those vertically. And then what we're going to do is come over to the layers on the right or the left, and we're going to right click. We're going to come down and say Add Auto Layout. Now you'll notice it creates this little frame here, not to be confused with a canvas. That's why I call them canvases. But you'll see that it automatically creates two columns. And now we have this new auto layout here on the right. And you'll see it automatically put horizontal, because it could tell I wanted a shape here and text here. But if for some reason you wanted the text above, you could say vertical, and you'll see it automatically switches to that arrangement. Now, the reason it's so cool to have this auto layout is because if you add more elements as you go through, so if we went to our text here, and let's say I just added a bunch of paragraphs, let's see here. I'm going to copy and paste the text like that. Now, obviously, it's all in one row. But if we group the text like this, let's see here. I think if we put this, yeah. So if you drag this under a little bit under here, oh, nope, now it's not working. But what's cool is, so I'll skip that. But basically, with the auto layout, you can adjust all the padding and stuff, and this, or rather the spacing between different columns. So you'll see it automatically just put in what I had, but I can scale this up and I can also scale the spacing on the top and bottom, and also on the left and the right. And so if I added more elements like that, you'll see it just keeps putting them into different columns. And it's very useful to have because it's just whenever you change the size of the text. So let's say if I come into the paragraph and I said, this is my text, and we just put this, resize this, you'll see as I scale this up, it automatically scales it inside to the center so that it's automatically aligned. Because remember, we aligned the shape and we aligned the text vertically. And as we did that, you'll see it scales up automatically. So that's super helpful. And the place you'll see this most useful is when you use wireframing templates. And I'll hopefully get a few minutes to touch on that later. But that's basically auto layout. Again, you can use it for horizontal or vertical, and you can just kind of create these sections that you can reuse for different parts of the project, or in other projects, if you get a certain couple of elements that you or rather sections that you keep reusing, you just jump back to this project, you can copy and paste, and everything's good to go. So that is auto layout. The next thing I'm going to talk about is components. So I'm going to go into this rectangle. I keep calling it a rectangle, this circle, and I'm going to just add some colors. It doesn't have to be super fancy. It's going to be pretty ugly, actually. But what I'm going to do is just add some text here. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and create a rectangle so that I can call it the right thing. And, or sorry, some text. And this is where auto layout, I'm going to use auto layout and components to show you this. So I'm going to say my button text. Now we just have text, right? And we're going to come up here and we're going to right click and say add auto layout. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a fill to the auto layout. Now, obviously it's white, so you can't see anything. But if I add a different background, make like a nice blue or something, now we've added a background color to the text. But if I change this text, like text here, you'll see it actually resizes because it's resizing with that auto layout to the button. So this is another really useful feature. And so I'll just jump back to my button text, make this look a little prettier. And that's where you can use your padding here in the auto layout section, or this one here. Awesome. So now we've got our button. So that's using the auto layout part of it. But now if we come to the frame, we can rename this to my button. And we're going to right click and we're going to say create component. Now what this does is it creates basically a universal style for this element. And this isn't really shown until you start creating multiple canvases and you start reusing that element. So if I copy and paste this, this frame here, then obviously it's just the same. But if I come back to the original, this first frame here, and I start changing text and I say, well, I want this to say buy now. Then we jump over to the second frame and you'll see it's obviously changed there. Now, what's really cool with components is, sometimes you have certain scenarios where you want to change one instance of the component, but you don't want to change it everywhere. Maybe you have like a night theme or night mode for your user interface and you want the button to go white instead of black. You can come to the instance of the component and you can actually come and change the color here. And you'll see as I'm changing that, it's not changing it on the left there. So that's really useful. But if I came to the original and I started changing the color, it changes it for both. So it's really useful for reusable elements like buttons, or for navigation, footers. If you're doing a lot of web design stuff, you'll use that all the time. And it makes such a difference, especially throughout the design process when you're doing revisions. Maybe you decide to move this page link in front of this page link, or you're going to just delete a page, but you've got like 30 different canvases where that navigation is being used. And you just come to one place and you change it and it updates everywhere. So it's really helpful for stuff like that. And then I kind of already touched on alignment. And And this is pretty self-explanatory, but there's a couple of cool tools. Obviously, you've got your basic left, middle, right, top, middle, and bottom. Let's put it back in the middle. But sometimes you want to do things like columns, or you want to make sure that things are evenly spaced out. So maybe if we had a couple of these columns, I'll just create a couple little items like this. And let's say I want to have 4 or 5 of these. Obviously these are not evenly spaced. But if I select all of these, first of all, we can, it's already asking, it's basically showing you because a new account, but we can come up to the top right and just align that. So if maybe some of these were like really messed up, we come up here, they snap into place. But then they've got this tidy up option, which just automatically senses that you want it to obviously be evenly spaced. And then you see they snap into place like that. So really useful for tools like that. You can also, the tidy up feature kind of takes care of this for you, but you can also distribute vertically or horizontally, meaning, if you wanted it to be vertically distributed evenly or whatever, you could do that if they were stacked on top of each other. For example, you could come up here and tidy up. Well, they're 2 over each other, but just expand this out. And we'll say vertically. Whoops, looks like they're already. And we'll say vertically. There you go. So it snapped into place, and then we can just align that like that. So that's alignment. And then the next thing I was going to talk about is styles. And styles are really the best way to think about this is they're basically like components, but for text. And you can still make components out of text, but the nicest thing is to really make styles. So you'll see I've kind of got a heading style here. It's bold, it's bigger. So we can come up to the right here and click this grid icon, and we can just say create style, and we can just call this heading. And now it locks those styles in as the heading theme. And then we could probably call this paragraph, for example. They create style. Now let's say we're on an entirely new artboard, or canvas, and we're trying to make a title. I could just say, this is my title. And obviously it's not, it actually snapped to the paragraph style, but if we wanted it to be heading, we can just simply click this and say heading. And then again, you could change that heading style and it'll update everywhere. So maybe if you say, I don't want the heading to be this font, I want it to be Comic Sans or something. Please don't do that, but it will obviously update all the heading styles to match that. So really useful for stuff like that. And then you can also use styles for different colors. So if you come up to that grid icon again, they generate these colors automatically for your team. You can actually go into your preferences and change those team colors. So if you want it to be your brand and your logo colors, you could swap that out. But you could also, maybe if you have a specific gradient, you could say like, brand gradient, create style. And then you can come in here and click the little tool icon and mess around, change it to linear and, make it all sorts of fancy colors that you wanted it to be. So really useful tools. Again, this is, it's kind of a forward-thinking approach to your designs, because these are things you want to know before you start your design. Like I said, you don't want to get to having 30 different canvases and then realize you weren't using components and then have to change the navigation on every single page. So you want to kind of start out with your design using these different features, but also it just keeps things very organized for your team. If you were going to pass this project off to another designer, off to a client, you want it to be very simple to understand, where they can quickly see, oh, like these are all the styles for the heading, and this is the colors we use. This is where the button is controlled. So really useful for stuff like that. The last thing in the part 2 of the training is shortcuts. You can never use shortcuts and still use the app if you want. I find them invaluable for moving really quickly around, especially when I need to make certain changes. So one thing I've actually been doing throughout the session is actually using a shortcut with the command and click. It's bothering me that wasn't perfectly centered. And so let's say we've got this frame here and we've already got a couple of, groups where we have the frame, we got the group, and then we got the text. But let's just take this to an extreme and keep grouping this. Obviously, if I wanted to get to the text, I'd have to go through so many of these groups just to find it that it's like almost pointless trying to get it. And then you got to expand the nav. It's just not worth it. So if you hold down Command and you click, it'll take you directly to that item. And I've got so many groups, you can't even see it, but it does highlight it here on the left. And it's the fastest way. You might not think like, well, I'm never going to have 14 groups for my element, but as the project moves along, it's going to get grouped into things, and it's just faster to not try and figure out where it is on which canvas. You can just hover over it, directly click on it, and you're into that group. So command click is awesome. Another thing I've been doing already is Alt and drag. So if you click, you hold the Alt key and you click and drag, it'll duplicate that for you immediately. And then there's a variation of that where if you hold Alt and Shift, so if you hold Alt, Shift, and click, it actually locks it in on that plane. So you can't see my mouse, but I'm moving it around, but it's locking it in vertically. And the same is true if you went to the right, it would keep it horizontally in that plane. Command and backslash I already talked about. That's to hide the UI. So really useful for presentations. And like I said, if you get overwhelmed with the UI or if you just want to look at your design in a really clean way. Again, some of these settings you can come up to this menu and mess with, but I don't want to overwhelm you with how many things there are. There are quite a lot, but you can see that show hide UIs there. So if you forget what some of these shortcuts are, you can look there. And I'll also find a way to link the Figma shortcuts. They actually have a whole page on their website where you can look at shortcuts. And then Command R will bring up your rulers if you don't have things selected. Actually, sorry, Shift R. Command R, I don't think does anything, but Shift R will bring up your rulers, and you'll see those just appear on the left and the top. And this is really great to really, you would want to do this on the first canvas if you're doing a set, style for your project. If it's like a website design, you don't want to go beyond the 100 pixel mark on this side, and then you don't want to go beyond the 100 pixel mark on this side. And then you've got those rulers, and then when you're dragging things, it'll snap into place to that ruler. And then when you want to look at your design, you just hit Shift R, the rulers go away. They're not deleted, but you can bring them back whenever you want. So really helpful to have rulers. If you are trying to jump between the tools, you can use just different letters to switch up here. So they actually tell you F is frame, R is rectangle, or any other shape. And then T is the text tool. I use V and T the most. The reason I use V the most is because if I'm on a rectangle tool, or maybe I'm drawing something out here, and I just want to jump back to selecting, just hit V. You can just quickly start selecting things again. So that's helpful. And those are really all the design tools I'm going to cover in this session. And the last thing I'm just going to talk about is exporting. So take a quick little water break again. But hopefully you guys are seeing how great Figma is. I'm very addicted to the app. We've switched our whole team over there just in the last 6-8 months, and we've really been enjoying it. Again, it may seem a little overwhelming with how much stuff there is, but hopefully this session is helpful, and it's not actually as overwhelming as it seems. But yeah, the last thing I'll touch on is exporting. Obviously, you're gonna want to get your designs out of Figma at one point, whether you're uploading a thumbnail to YouTube or sharing a PDF with a client. And there's really a couple different ways to do this. The simplest way, if you're just trying to share the project with someone, is just to come up to share at the top right, like I talked about earlier. And you can just copy that link and send it to someone. You can also get an embed code. And you can actually embed Figma into things like Notion, or if you want to embed it right into your website, you can do something like that. And so that's the fastest way to get your design over to someone. Just if you want them to be able to look at it and comment, that might be all you need. But if you're trying to share with a developer and you need to bring out certain assets, or again, like if you're sharing it with a client, this is probably the most important. Um, it's not that hard. All you have to do is come to your frames here at the top, and you can actually just click. You'll see when I hover over, it highlights in blue, and you can just hit the desktop one text. And then you're going to come down here to the bottom right and say export. And you've actually got a couple of different options. You can export as an image, which would be a PNG, a JPEG, or an SVG, or you can export as a PDF. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you download PDFs is that they are massive when you download them from Figma. I just downloaded this small project. It's not that big. It's like 50 kilobytes, so it's nothing. But as soon as you start adding, icons and you start adding real images, I've gotten one page up to like 110 megs, which if that doesn't mean anything to you, your entire PDF for a 30-page website shouldn't be more than, 3 or 4 megabytes. So you just want to be careful, because if you're sharing that with a client, and they have an old laptop or something, that PDF could crash their laptop. But there's another tool called ilovepdf.com, and that can actually compress it for you. But the advantage of exporting PDFs from Figma is that it's super high resolution. So you get a lot of fidelity for every aspect of the design. So often what we'll do is we'll share a link to a JPEG or an image for our clients, and then we'll also attach the PDF so they can comment on the image, but then they can look like high fidelity on the actual design in the PDF. So that's how you export artboards. And then exporting elements, you can come down and you could, if you wanted to export this little group, for example, you could, and you just do the same thing, come down to export, and you could say PNG, JPEG, SVG, and you can actually preview what it's going to look like. You'll see it automatically frames up that group. And if I were to expand this text, just align it, and then come down, you'll see it actually resizes. So it'll just export the exact dimensions of the group for you. Really useful for stuff like that. And you can change the different image formats there. And one thing you'll notice is when you click on like an element or an artboard, they have a 1x factor there. And if we go back to, I think it was this one here, we can actually scale this up to 4 times, 3 times, 2x to actually give a higher quality. Now, keep in mind, you can only do this for certain elements like text or shapes. You can't do it for any type of image, because an image is the resolution you get it as. Even if it's a professional photo, it's only going to be so big, and you probably don't want to use that boosting factor for that. But it's really helpful. Maybe your developer just needs a really high quality, version of that file. So that's where you can control that. Really useful. And that's basically exporting. Now you can export multiple canvases at once, and you can just come down here and say export. So if you knew that you wanted all your canvases to be PDF, but one thing to keep in mind is when you do that, it actually downloads a zip file with an individual PDF for each page. It's a little frustrating. I wish they would just combine them automatically for you. But again, maybe you don't want every artboard to be combined and you want those separate files. So that's just something to keep in mind. But yeah, that's really Figma. That's the crash course. I know I really did fly through that. And so if you have any questions, you can definitely comment and we'll try and get to it. But I really love using the tool. There's tons and tons of resources out there for Figma. One website I would check out is Figma/templates. Very easy to find. And you can actually find other templates that people have made and they're just giving away for free. So like I was talking about wireframing kits, and they give you a little preview of how it works. But if you just click get this template for free, it'll take you right to the link and it'll automatically duplicate it to your account. So now you can play around with this and move whatever you want. And they've got all these little buttons and they've got these pricing charts and navigation. And this is just a free template. And if we go back, there's other things there. If we go, I think I've lost the link there, but I'll keep this open. They've got mood board makers. They've got, a mobile app kit. and they add to this constantly. And this isn't even the only site. This is just, the official Figma templates resource page. But you could just search, free Figma wireframing template or free Figma thumbnail template. And I guarantee someone's going to have an awesome template out there for free that you can just jump on and just copy. Or even if you're, if it's a paid template, maybe they'll give you a link just to view it and you could just see how people use it. What's really cool is they've made it like a community where people share on a bunch of different platforms their templates. And I would definitely recommend using templates, especially something like that wireframing template. We use that all the time. Not that specific one, but we have used other wireframing templates in the past. And we use it basically at the start of every single project. So there's a lot of cool resources out there. And I believe if you, I don't think there's a link to it, but I was just going to show you, if you even just Google search Figma shortcuts, they have that page like I was talking about with just a full list of every Figma shortcut. So it looks like it's actually not on their website, but if you search for something like, how do I save? And they'll just show you that there. And I believe that they automatically detect if you're on a Mac or PC, because you can use this in your browser. You'll notice that I've been doing this all in my browser, but they do have an actual desktop app you can download. But I think they just detect if you're on a PC or a Mac, and they just show you that shortcut accordingly. So yeah, so that's basically Figma. I would really recommend just getting in there. And we honestly haven't run into any project in really this year that we haven't been able to do in Figma. And we've worked on a variety of projects like websites. We've worked on apps, dashboards, YouTube thumbnails, social graphics. We've moved our whole brand identity and all the assets into a Figma project that we can constantly pull from. And the greatest thing is, it is like the best way to think about it is Google Docs, but for design. It's incredibly collaborative. You can comment and share links with people really easily. And the best part is it's free. So I'm definitely biased, but hopefully this session was helpful, and hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.